Larry, let's talk about some de-escalation now. China. How do you see the situation on the current tariff wars, Trump tariff wars with China? I mean, Trump started to play his poker game, calling the bluff. China called his bluff,
Yeah.
and then Trump at some point said, "Hey, okay, let's remove tariffs from these articles, electronics, all that." And now China looks like China has removed tariffs from some articles that she also needs. How do you see the development of the situation on that line, on that direction?
Well, it's not Trump's goal is to break China and force China to come begging for relief, and China's not going to do that. Real simple. The China would rather take the economic hit and have, millions of people out of work, but they'll blame it on the United States. Hey, we didn't do this to you. This was a economic Pearl Harbor against us. We were attacked. So now that we know the nature of the enemy, we're going to have to build up our forces to protect ourselves. This is, I think it's an incredibly stupid policy by Trump. Very counterproductive. There are more diplomatic ways to approach the Chinese and to obtain, what's our objective? Is our objective to return manufacturing jobs to the United States? Okay, well, one of the main reasons that doesn't happen is because the US dollar is the reserve currency. And by virtue of being the reserve currency, it's going to make any kind of at least low level manufacturing almost impossibly expensive. So the United States got to make a choice. Are we going to continue to be the reserve currency and try to control the world financially? But that means we're going to continue to hollow out, destroy our own industrial base. Or are we going to, change and recognize some of these changes may take years? Yeah, they can't be accomplished overnight or in a month or two or in a year or two.
Yeah. Two things that I think is very important on this case. One, I was thinking about it, and the tariffs, protectionism is not per se a bad thing. Every country do some protectionism on his industry, his economy, but you don't put tariffs on countries. You put tariffs perhaps on products, on certain segments of the industry, or
Yeah,
agriculture. It's
yeah, yeah, it's targeted. It's most effective if they're targeted. Um, if you're trying to grow or protect your beef industry, then you put tariffs on beef coming from China. Not that there is any. It's just I think the flow is the exact opposite. Um, but um, but to do this just across the board punishment of China is viewed correctly so by the Chinese as a act of hostility, an act of war, albeit an economic warfare, but it's still an act of war. So then you have to step back and say, okay, what do we need to do to protect ourselves? They're going to China will react to this in ways that I don't think the West has anticipated. The parallel is what we saw take place with NATO, its growth, and then Russia's ultimate reaction said, okay, they're coming after us. We're going to have to prepare. And now look, NATO, despite having 28 countries or more as members, are outmatched by one country, Russia.
Yeah, and that should be another escalation on this roller coaster.
Yeah,
Uh, we just had some attacks on Crimea with storm shadows. You know, pointed out that's probably United States surveillance sending information. Uh, what is in the mind of these people? Do do they think that Europe's going for that, and the United States just going to save face on it? Do you, how do you think they're? watching these things? Because I just don't understand.
Well, who?
The United States.
But you said they. How are they watching this? What do you mean?
How do you think the United States is perceiving this, escalation by the British or the Europeans? And do they believe that they are just going to save face because, yeah, now we're having talks with, with Russia, and Russia is just going to blame
Yeah.
Europe on everything and leave us behind? How do you see this escalation with Russia? It looked we were going on the right path for once.
Again, Trump is failing to understand, appreciate, comprehend Russia's position. Russia's been very, very clear since June 14th of 2024. Their position is not only is I can't say it's unchanged, it's because becoming stricter. They're going to take more territory. Up to this point, they said, okay, look, well, the four oblasts that are now part of the Russian Federation, four former Ukrainian oblasts, Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, Kherson, those are now permanently part of Russia. If the Ukrainians and the United States, they fail to take this deal as it is this on the table now, they're going to take Dnipropetrovsk, Sumy, Poltava, and Kharkiv. There'll be four more oblasts that will fall under the control of Russia, that will control the vast natural resources that the West is lusting to get control of. So Trump and company, they I don't know what he says to Putin in private. All I can go on is based on what he says in public. He doesn't get it, and they think they've really got leverage over Russia, which is insane. Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, was at a conference yesterday, and he commented on the fact that this deal, they call it the rare earths mineral deal, that actually there's probably a couple of other agreements attached to it that have not become public. But he said the real reason is they're showing that there's now no daylight between the United States and Ukraine in order to get leverage with Russia. Well, Russia already knew that. They knew that the United States was the instigator of this war, the major instigator of this war. And that Donald Trump wants to pretend that he didn't have anything to do with this? Nonsense. It was under Trump's first term that the Ukrainian military increased in size by a factor of 4, quadrupled in size. It was under Trump that they started getting lethal weapons in the form of Javelin missiles to go after tanks. It was under Trump that Ukraine with NATO began carrying out offensive military exercises, anti-submarine warfare, amphibious warfare, and that it was under Trump that the B-52 flew along the coast of Crimea. All of this was actions to provoke, to embarrass, to rub the face of Russia in the dirt, if possible. And so, and then the United States completely rejected under Biden the peace proposals that Vladimir Putin brought forward. So here's all we need. You got to address our concern about the creeping expansion of NATO towards our borders. That's got to stop. And the United States says, screw off. We're going to do whatever the hell we want. And what are you going to do about it? Okay, Russia's showing you what they're going to do about it. They're going to crush Ukraine. And in the process of crushing Ukraine, they're going to drain NATO of military resources. And they've also expanded their missile technology with weapon systems that nobody in Europe has, and that every major city in Europe is vulnerable to be hit by the Oreshnik missile. So,
which, by the way, was a consequence of another treaty that Trump moved away from, right?
Right. Yeah.
Was it Trump? Yeah,
Yeah.
it was Trump.
Yeah, the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Agreement in 2018, I believe.
So yeah, Trump is getting consequences from Trump. That's awesome. Just
yeah, it's unfortunate. Trump is he's missing opportunities where he could have been consequential for the right reasons. He's going to be historic president. for the wrong reasons. He can keep telling himself, "Oh, I'm the best. I'm the greatest." Unlike Muhammad Ali. I mean, that was Muhammad Ali's shtick. I'm so pretty. Nobody dare touch my face. He would do. He had a wonderful voice and a lilt. But man, he'd go out and do it. He could perform. Trump, big talk, big mouth, but not a lot of action. Or we've seen it over and over. Oh, I'm going to release all the files. Where are they? Well, they're hung up.
Yeah. Where's the Epstein files, by the way? Do we have
Yeah.
something?
Yeah, no, they're sitting on them. There are too many prominent Republicans that are going to be embarrassed. Enough Democrats that they can blackmail into supporting Trump. They're going to use it.
Exactly. Larry, I have one last question to get you out of here. It's about your perception inside the United States. How do you see the situation inside the United States economy? Grocery going to places.
So far,
overall?
there's no visible sign yet of a recession. That things have run into trouble. The opposition to Trump, I think Trump has lost some support, but it's not irretrievable. But if he goes down the road of conflict with Russia and with Iran and with China, then yeah, he'll lose. He can't win that fight.